All right, folks, so we are back, and I got to tell you, I could think of no story of greater importance with more ramifications that should evoke more outrage than this story about the FCC planning to police the newsrooms of America. And it is shocking. It is frightening. It is hair-raising. It is spine-tingling, whatever you want to call it. It's an extension of an administration, a president out of control, a lawless president who doesn't obey the Constitution, who breaks the law, who many have called, referred to his presidency as an imperial president, to what Bret Baier had to say in talking about this story on Fox News Special Report.
Correspondent Shannon Bream on what many see as the frightening implications tonight.
Whenever I hear of the government going into a newsroom to do something other than deliver coffee, I become frightened, because the government should not, as a general rule, be any part of journalism.
But that is exactly what the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, wants to do. Send investigators into television and radio stations to ask questions like, what is the news philosophy of the station? Who decides which stories are covered? The stated purpose of the multi-market study of critical information needs is to determine how media outlets pick their stories, whether there is a perceived bias, and how responsive stations are to, quote, underserved populations.
In other words, minority populations. You understand what this is about? It's the FCC. And by the way, it was one of the FCC members who sounded this alarm, who warned of this, in an effort to try to evoke enough public outrage to try to prevent it somehow. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said at the very, very top of the hour in promoting this, I'm not talking about Venezuela. I'm not talking about China. I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about the United States of America, at least a country that used to be the United States of America prior to 2009, where they are now going to send the people who approve licenses for TV and radio stations into the newsrooms to see if there's any bias. Don't worry, they're not looking for liberal bias. They want to see who picks the stories and how the stories are picked and what goes into picking those stories. And what about the needs of the minority? Don't kid yourself when they say of the community, they mean the minority community. What about the needs of the minority community? Are they being fairly represented? And who works in this newsroom? Is this a lily white newsroom? Are there enough women here? What about gays? Are there enough gays represented here? I'm telling you, folks, this is something, we had talked, not on this show, but when Obama took over, there was a lot of talk about bringing back the so-called fairness doctrine, which Ronald Reagan did away with. Jimmy Carter brought it on, and Ronald Reagan did away with it, where every side of every story would have to get, even on a show like this or on a talk show on radio, would have to get equal coverage. So you'd bring on somebody to talk about something like this as an outrage, then you'd have to bring on somebody to defend it. Equal time, fairness doctrine, they called it. Well, they did away with that. And Democrats have been trying to bring it back ever since. And now this is their way of circumventing actually bringing back the fairness doctrine, because it would never get through Congress. But this is their way of just using executive power again by ordering the FCC into our nation's newsrooms. And joining us right now, I am very happy to say, is Congressman Marsha Blackburn, Republican, of course, from the great state of Texas, the vice chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, whose committee is in charge of things like this. Hello, Congressman. Great to talk to you.
It is so good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on. And this is a story that, pardon me, Steve, didn't get a lot of attention initially, and I think now people are beginning to take another look at it and realize what some of us have been talking about, as we have had concerns over the FCC trying to place control over content. And of course, they've tried the net neutrality rules again, and now they're trying the fairness doctrine again.
Right, but as I said, not calling it the fairness doctrine because it would never get through Congress. But this is their way, just like the EPA, unilaterally institutes things that can never get through Congress. Now he's doing it with the media, and I got to tell you, Like I said, this is not Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. This is not Russia and Putin. This is the United States of America, and we are in uncharted waters here. And when you take it in the context of everything that's been going on, Congresswoman, how frightened are you?
Well, I think everybody should be incredibly concerned. You know, the Energy and Commerce Committee that you mentioned, where I serve as vice chair, we were responsible for getting that original fairness doctrine scrapped from the Federal Register, and we are determined to head this off at the pass again also. Now, Chairman Wheeler knows that we have concerns about this, but he is not seeming to make any changes that are going to guarantee that all of our First Amendment protections are going to be protected, that our First Amendment rights. Now, what we're also very concerned about is what is happening when you hear them talking about placing monitors if you keep individuals from owning a station. But let me tell you something. You've got one issue that deals with access to capital, and you've got another issue that deals with control of content. And it is that control of content where the fairness doctrine tries to go, and that is what we are going to be fighting against.
All right, how can you fight if the FCC decides they're going to send people out? How could your committee, how could Congress stop them?
Well, one of the things that we will be doing is immediately on top of this, requesting information. We will be doing the hearings. We will be pushing for a halt to this. We will be rolling back the $1 million that they have already programmed and put in place for this study. And as we go through the appropriations process this summer, we'll have the opportunity to do that. And what we will seek to do is, again, make certain that they do not get, the FCC does not net neutrality order, which Congress voted down, which the FCC tried to do through the rules. Then they were challenged on it in court. It was thrown out, and the FCC ruled against in the U.S. District Court. And what they wanted to do with net neutrality is have the federal government, with all of your internet connections, have control over priority of when things travel down the pipe and the content that gets priority as it travels down the pipe.
Right.
Who gets what speed when it goes down that pipe. So all of this is tied into one bucket of issues, and it is Chairman Wheeler and an enormous overreach by the FCC.
All right, so just again so I'm clear, if they decide to stop them?
Well, what we will be doing is working through the legislative process to do everything we can to stop them. With the net neutrality, I already have a bill that will be filed tomorrow that will address that, and keeping our internet free and open. When it comes to the newsrooms, they've already put the $1 million in place for the study.
Right.
They've done this through the rules. What we will do is to go back in and claw back that money.
All right, but of course, now the Senate would have a role in this too, right? So anything you do in the House.
The Senate would have a role in it, but bear in mind, we have had bipartisan support.
Right.
In opposing the overreach of the FCC.
Right.
That works in our favor.
And this is an election year, and you would think that many senators wouldn't want any part of being involved in anything that looks to be a violation. Do you believe that this is a violation of the First Amendment?
I am very concerned that this is a violation of the First Amendment. And when you look at what they are seeking to do in the newsrooms and conduct this study, I do believe that that would be a violation of our First Amendment rights.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Congresswoman, Congressman, I can't believe we're sitting here talking about this, and again, like I said, it comes on the heels of a lawless presidency in the minds of many, and I'm not talking about conservatives, I'm talking about the Jonathan Turleys of the world and outside observers who say that this president has been breaking the law, unconstitutionally and changing laws unconstitutionally, and I got a pen, that's his new mantra, I got a pen, and now this, I got to tell you, it's getting scary.
It is very troublesome. You're exactly right about that. And as I am out in my district and as I am in the districts with my colleagues, their districts, and talking to people, they have tremendous fear And they worry that when they put their head on the pillow at night, the thing they worry about is that our nation is going to cease to be what it's been, that we're not going to have the freedoms that we have had, and we're not going to have the ability and the opportunity to enjoy the American dream. And it really is a frightening, frightening thought. So our goal is to jump in here. You know, Steve, and you and I have talked about this before. A lot of days I feel like we're playing whack-a-mole because they do all of this by executive order. We find out about it just like everybody else does when we hear it reported. That's how we find out about most of this.
Yeah,
because this is not a transparent administration that lets us know what they're going to do and when they're going to do it.
By the way, I didn't say Texas. Did I say Texas when I introduced you? If I did, I apologize. I must have Texas on the brain.
You know what? Listen, there would not be a Texas if not for Tennessee. And my husband is from Fort Worth, Texas. So
there you go.
There you go.
But of course, listen, we always appreciate you coming on and talking about this kind of stuff with you. But I got to tell you, this, and you're right. There's not much talking. There wasn't. I've been watching, the CNNs and the MSNBCs monitoring this all day, and they're not talking about it. And it's their newsrooms, you would think, that are going to get hit as well. Maybe they welcome it. I don't know. But even the Association of Broadcasters, the National Association of Broadcasters, in a story from Investors Business Daily, said their reaction was mealy-mouthed, saying that the FCC should reconsider. I mean, that is mealy-mouthed. I mean, they should be outraged.
Let me tell you what I think is happening. Number one, I think that many of these technology issues are indeed very wonky, technical, probably a little bit more difficult to understand. So when you start reading these orders and directives and requests for public comment that come from the FCC, a lot of it is very technical, and many times people do not read through the whole thing. The second thing, when you hear some of the responses to this and why people are not covering it, part of it is the technicality of some of these things. And when you say the words net neutrality, that sounds good. When you say fairness doctrine, that sounds right. So they say, what is it all about? And then the other thing is, people cannot believe that in America this is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Congressman, go get them and protect us all. It's all up to you, Congresswoman. Congressman. All right, listen, thank you so much. We'll speak to you soon.
Good talking to you.
You too. It's Congressman Marsha Blackburn from the great state of Tennessee. Why would I say Texas? I don't know. All right, when we come back, Kendall Coffey, he's in Florida. That much I know. We'll go spinning the law. We'll talk about the constitutionality of this and much, much more straight ahead on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax Television.